not embarrassed about it or anything like that. It's just...
Well, see, this is what I've discovered in doing this. In that, nostalgia is a vice to some and a luxury to others.
Yeah.
Well, that's a challenge for me, you see, because I'm not writing an expose of Prune or anything like that. No. This is going to be a celebration. It's going to be fun. And
is this covering I'm Sorry I Read That Again as well as I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue?
Oh, totally, yes.
Yeah.
It's basically, and I make no claims for it being very clever because I didn't realise it until a lot longer. It's a Bible. It's called the I'm Sorry Bible.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And then I go right back to the start, which is where I am right now, going back to 1971, 72, when Graham came up with I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. And that's the second half of the book. And at the back there's
very silly of him, I might say, but there you go. I remember admonishing him for it at the time. Was it 1971, as early as that?
That's when he pitched it, and I think he tried a pilot then, and then 72 was the first series.
Was it really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's that early, even, frankly, because I do know... I mean, do you want to take notes or recording?
Well, I'm recording now.
A sneaky little recorder?
Well, I'm hoping. It's brand new. I've never used it.
That's the sneakiest recorder I've ever seen.
I've never used it. I've never tried it before.
It doesn't work.
If I get home and it doesn't work, then I will cry.
Yeah. But you're assuming then that these words are going down. Okay.
If not, and otherwise I'm taking it all in. If nothing else, I've got... If you can put me right, that's the main thing. Because Tim's told me, quite frankly, and being right, that's all that matters. As long as there are no... Well, there won't be any lies, but inaccuracies... No,
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so
it'd be interesting if there's any contentious points, I don't know. I would have assumed, if you'd asked me when I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue started, I would have thought it was later than that, you see, but only because I do remember my attitude was... Oh, great, so you've managed to cut us out of the bloody writing fees, have you? And I remember being quite sarky about it and saying, well, I said, wait a minute, exactly that. You've given them a cheaper version of I'm Sorry I Read That Again, because there's no script fees. Maybe Graham was copying for a large origination fee, but I very much doubt it. And what I felt... whether this is still the same, I wouldn't know. But certainly at the series I did, whether it was 1 or 2, I also felt, well, all the bits that really worked weren't ad-libbed at all. Without a doubt, they were sort of written in the pub before we did the show. So you go along at whenever it was, I can't remember, but let's say 2 o'clock. I would meet in the pub, and then spend about 2 hours in the pub in the dressing room.
Was this Sherlock Holmes, by the way? Sherlock Holmes pub?
Yeah, it probably was. And writing, and it was writing, in a way that wasn't much different from writing the actual I'm Sorry I Read That Again script, because we were doing all the late arrivals and all that kind of thing. They weren't ad-libs, of course not, And so they're all... And so I remember saying to Graham, but I'm sorry, what we seem to be doing now is giving them a free script. And the only bits that really work are the ones which you're writing. And I think that was the case then, much more, than it then became. Because nobody was terribly used to improvisational humour, and that sort of stuff, which is now, absolute cliche. Everybody does it, And at the time, I wasn't comfortable, I have to admit. I don't know whether Tim and Graham were comfortable or just or whatever, but I was surprised when I heard it back not too long ago, and somebody played, I had that, they sent me that first one, some anniversary type thing, and I thought, God, this must be agony. And I played it back, and I thought, it wasn't that bad at all, actually. It was fine, but I didn't enjoy it, and it was as simple as that. And I especially because we were doing 2 shows a day as well. I thought, this is bloody slave labour, we're getting paid bugger all, 3 scripts and 2 shows, and I really wasn't enjoying it. And I do remember total sense of relief when I actually said, look, I'm sorry, I don't want to do any more of these. It's just made me feel sick every day, and every time I went in to do it, it's sort of a bit nerve-wracking. And I'm sure there was more than one occasion where I swore during the rehearsals or the broadcast, because obviously not live, I'm sorry, I really haven't got a fucking clue. I don't know what this, I do not know what this, and profanity was not quite so easily combined those days.
Not ready for.
Would be fine now. I'm sure there's. Sorry, I haven't a fucking clue. Would be a very good title, but
that'll be the next one.
That will be the
evolve
next
into
one.
that.
Yes, yeah, and.
You can actually hear John on some episode. I was taking notes last night, and he does just say, I think in the last ever episode of the first series, which is the last one he did. Yeah. Just I can't do this. He says it as he's doing it. It's just this is my thing, and it's actually in the show. Yeah. Well, that's right, and it was. I'm sure he felt the same, and we probably sympathised at the time, and I may have lasted a bit longer, but I think we felt the same. Yeah. So this isn't something I enjoy. Ironically, I have to say now. I would enjoy it, but I've never been asked, so there you go. But whether there's a story to that, I really wouldn't know. But I think I'd made some comments sometime a year or two ago. You seem to have just about we having Max Bygraves on before you have me on by the sound of it. But I think I let it be known that I wouldn't mind, but I've never been asked. Oh. And I say, ironically. It wouldn't bother me at all now, I don't know why. About sort of, at some stage, maybe 5-6 years ago, I suddenly discovered that actually long-term improvisations I was perfectly happy doing. I did something for somebody and just talked for about half an hour about some complete... It was one of those spoof documentaries on... they did that series, that thing about Michael Aspel. Did you see that one? Oh God, yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually did about an hour for that because they'd asked, that company had said, roughly what it is. It's not actually true, but we want your memories of Michael Aspel. I just made up absolute nonsense about having newsreading groupies and all this sort of stuff at the time. And I came away thinking, Jesus Christ, I've just improv'd half an hour. I don't do this. So and something changed, So I wouldn't care now, Well, improv has changed as well. That's the funny thing when you listen to the old shows. Yeah. And apart from anything else, you've got a prune audience in there who love you guys. Yes, they're there to see you. Yeah. And a lot of it is just kind of all over the place and just sort of laughing at that. But when something goes right, when you improvise a calypso that just works, the audience is like Jesus has arrived. They go absolutely mad. Whereas today they just go, yes, well done, move on to the next one. We all do that. We've seen Newsline anyway. I'll have to do a whole opera in there, and I'll just stick a few words to some song. Improv wasn't brand new at the time. Oh God, no! There was a show that Peter Jones had done. No, it wasn't remotely brand new. We were particularly aware of it. Actually, Tim and I had been to America with Cambridge Circus and so John, and we'd seen the American improvisation groups like the Premise and the Second City, where they were already playing what have become, Whose Lines Anyway, theatre, sports, that sort of thing. You actually replaced Second City, didn't you, at Square East? I thought. Yeah, well, it was their club in a sense. It was their Chicago group, or were, probably still are. And that was their theatre, was in Washington Square, New York, and we took over from there. But that thing, I remember the Premise was one of those groups as well. That happening in the '60s in London, American improv shows. Give me a subject, give me a style, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So it's obviously it wasn't at all new in that sense. But it's the silly things that have evolved, as far as I can see, that seem to have given, I'm sorry, I haven't a clue, the longevity. Obviously, Mornington Crescent, which, so you make up. It's unfair for me in a way, because I know the genesis of that kind of thing, because in a Goodies bit somewhere they play Spat with me, and there's a stupid game where there's no rules at all, and they just make them up. Is that the card game? Yeah, and you just make it up, and so I know where these things come from, and in a way that's Mornington Crescent is a real live version, I guess, of those things where there aren't any rules at all, really, but you try and convince the public that there are. That is the whole of Clue, isn't it? Yes, it is. And even from the start, and it's even more so at the start, because you've got Humph in the middle in the first series, really sort of totting up the scores, and you've done nothing, but he marks you 150 for one and 2 for another. So Mornington Crescent is just like a little version of the whole thing, really. Yes, and obviously Humph is, in many ways, I don't think anybody would dispute, is the star of it, because he's the one person who's been there the whole. Tim and Graham, I guess, have been there the whole time, but he
really seems to represent it more than anything else.
That's a terrifying thing, really, isn't it? 'Cause
well, it's interesting.
He is 80.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting.
It's wonderful, but at the same time,
blimey, yeah.
you just think, oh dear, what's going to happen? And you don't want to think about it, you don't want to say it, but
I wasn't thinking about it. He's a trumpet player. He's very fit.
Exactly. I mean,
old jazz man lasts forever. He'll be fine.
Oh, that's good. That's great. I'm happy to be able to quote you on that.
No, I think you can. Yes, it's quite safe on that.
Anyway, I think we can sort of finish up on Clue altogether now. Just one other thing. It's just so Graham came up with the idea.
Yes.
But surely it must have been a lot harder to write an episode of I'll read that again with a full play.
No, well, you see, I don't think it was really, because apart from anything else, as you say, the audience of I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again, or whatever we call them, the prune crowd or whatever. I mean, there were certain elements they were going to demand anyway. I guess to a point there was some truth in that, and it did coincide. You have to remember, if it was 72, that's even more significant, because it coincided with us starting the Goodies as well, and Graham and I had been writing Doctor in the House, Doctor at Large, and all sorts of other stuff, and they've been doing Broaden Your Mind, I suppose, and I did a few songs for that, but mainly I suppose as a writing thing, by God, Graham and the two of us had written bloody months worth of material, so I guess there was a feeling. I don't recall that myself.
I think he was worried of spreading himself too thinly for radio money.
I think we just thought it was too much to do. I mean, there was a period where we were doing the Goodies, Doctor at Large or something, and I'm Sorry, With It Again, and I'm Sorry, Home Decree was in the offing. I suppose there were all these different things going. So it was we were writing an awful lot. So in that sense, I suppose making things up as you go along would appear to be easier. But as I said, it wasn't. I don't remember the stress. You say you didn't have when you were writing scripts for I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again, or that wasn't so stressful, because you'd sit and write the script, and Graham does his stuff, I'd do my stuff, put them together, because I don't know how much he said about that, but very often we would we'd divide things up, like if it was the Time Trousers or something like that, say you write this week, I'll write next week. And
so I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, as I recall, we often did. I mean, the Goodies, we very rarely took a whole episode. I think the only one I remember being self-written was, I think, the Dodo, because I was in hospital. I had an operation, and I remember writing that one in the hospital. So I've saved us a bit of bother this week, mate. You can have a week off. But it was the Goodies was definitely the system again. I don't know if Graham said the same thing. I do hope so, because it's true. So we used to meet up. Tim would be in perhaps at an early stage with general ideas and things for the subjects. And then Gray and I would have a day where we mapped out story, and let's say we had a 12-point storyline, and we used to do half and half, but we divided up in some funny ways sometimes. Sometimes we'd say, well, I'll do all the visual stuff this week, and you do the studio, and sometimes we'd do part 1 and part 2, roughly speaking. So we divided in different ways, and then we go away and work on that separately for a few days, and then we come back together and read each other's essay, as it were, which I always resented for 2 reasons. Graham, first of all, was better at performing things just off the top of his head than I was, and even more intimidating was the fact that he typed his all out and I didn't, you see. Nowadays it was a bit all on the word processor, and mine would still be in longhand or something, and because it's very intimidating, because he, as I did explain to him, I said, I wish you'd stop doing that, because it makes me feel like I'm making you go and retype something that's finished, because it's all nice. I mean, if you scribbled a pile of rubbish in, just scribble it, then he never felt any compunction about criticising mine, I'd say, well, go and rewrite it, and I said, well, fair enough, but I couldn't bring myself to do it, I said, but yours is all neat, I don't want to start putting red pencils on it, and he'd say, it's all right, I type quickly, but he never learned, he always intimidated me by being neater and better.
well, since we're going around the houses a bit, when we're going back to, Humphrey Barclay's just left, I'll read that again. That's pretty much when you and Graham took the reins and really started scripting everything.
It probably is, isn't it?
Anyone almost could have written it. You know, the Humphrey Bucky had a good team who were probably still around.
Well,
what made you two gel together?
Well, the early days, I think, like most things, to be perfectly honest, it's whatever's quickest in a sense and whatever's easiest. And the early days of I'm Sorry, Everything Again, as I recall, and it's a long time ago, you know, in fact I can even remember it all, it's quite an achievement, but it was, I know, but particularly via Humphrey, it was one of those programmes, and I guess there still are, you know, your week endings for wages and whatever they do now, there must be lots of them, where 25 writers' names would flash up at the end. And we at least could claim people who went on to be much more famous than we did, and more successful, like Cook and Mortimer, Nesbitt and Larby. I remember those, and there were one or two others, I think. So people who actually did go on to be very successful comedy writers would send us scripts. And yeah, we did quite a lot of them, and I'm sure they were fine. But equally, we'd get quite a lot which weren't so good as well. And in very simple terms, I'm pretty sure Graham and I just felt, why bother? You know, and let's keep this within ourselves. And also, I think it meant, therefore, that we could kind of theme the whole programme a bit more too. You know, you know, the reappearance of catchphrases and all that sort of thing. You know, was kind of built into it a lot more. So it was more of a fluid piece that way.
Well, I suppose no one knew your audience better than you did, and it's a very audience-led show.
Oh yeah, but we certainly didn't put things into the fucking audience. I mean, they're a liability, that lot. I mean, it was. I mean, my favourite moment, I think, was one of my favourite moments involved John Cleese haranguing the audience and them just screaming with joy, thinking it's all part of the show, because, you know, it was along the lines of, I'm sorry, that was a good joke, okay? You boo and you hiss, and yes, okay, we try and do that to you, but sometimes there's a really good joke there, and you still boo and hiss. Are you actually listening to this or not? You know, because it just seems terribly funny, but it was true. It used to drive us bonkers sometimes that the standard boo, you know, sort of groan thing. You say, no, I'm sorry, this is actually quite clever. You know, this is a good bit. No, there is a difference. And the audience became a many-headed monster without any doubt and took over. It used to scare the life out of me. It's kind of weird.
See, it's amazing. I really don't want to. I don't want to get too crazy with this idea in the book because I think I'd be laughed at for it. But Tim agreed with me eventually, sort of.
Eventually, you had to force him.
Yeah, well,
you do agree.
I think he was sort of reluctant, but the similarities, the parallels between the Cambridge Circus team and the Beatles are pretty mind-blowing.
Oh, God.
When you think that you were there, you started at exactly the same time. That was when you became popular. And there are 100 little things I could go through, like George Martin recording the album, you know, just after doing with the Beatles and things like that. But the way that it ends up with you all up on stage and not being able to hear because of the noise of the audience.
Yes,
thinking,
there's some element.
This, it's not, you know, they're not listening.
Well, I don't think I would agree to this extent. I would agree that, and it was again funny enough the same with the Goodies. You know, they used to, when Newman and Baddiel sort of started doing big venues in whenever it would be, the 80s or something like that, and it was dubbed, you know, comedy is the new rock and roll. And I remember attempting to say to whoever would listen at the time, well, actually, you know, we have been through a couple of phases, actually, where it was definitely a rock and roll response. And one was the Goodies, and of course we were doing rock and roll as well, we were doing music, but the level of hysteria sometimes, and especially if we went and did book signings and stuff like that, was just unbelievable. And we had several hit records, so of course I was protesting that we not only were comedy, we were rock and roll, you know, we did both. But also, you're right, that the I'm Sorry thing was, in its own way, it wasn't Shea Stadium, but it was halfway down the bloody road there, wherever it was, Marlborough Street or something, Northumberland Avenue, wasn't it? Yeah, down there. Yes, you're right, and it was a little bit out of hand, frankly.
And it's the whole theme of it as well. It's the idea of sex. I mean, basically what you're saying now, I've already argued in the book. It's quite apparent when you look at it that. In the 60s, you had this sudden youth explosion of things happening. Oh yeah. You had Carnaby Street.
Hey, listen, we were part of the Cambridge Circus team. Were undoubtedly not just here, but in America, part of what was known as the British invasion, because we were on Broadway in 1964, 4 and 5, and that was exactly the same time as Beatles and the Stones and everybody was starting out. The Animals, I remember we did what's his name? Who was that? One of those, not Jack Parr, the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah.
With the Animals, they were on there, you know, and I could pass for Eric Burden in those days quite well, so I got a lot of screams if I just appeared briefly at a window. I remember thinking, this is good, I'm enjoying this. And it was known as the British invasion. Brits on Broadway were the sort of headlines you'd get in the New York papers. And you had Oh What a Lovely War, which was playing in theatre, literally backing onto us. And there were a few other British shows on at the time, and the British pop invasion, you know. So yeah, we were absolutely bang slap in the middle. There's no doubt about that. We did a Beatles medley parody type thing, with all the silly songs. Hallelujah, like the Beatles. Hallelujah chorus, like the Beatles.
I want to hold your handle.
Yeah, something like that. It was written by John Cameron, actually. John Cameron, yeah. Well, as Eric claimed it.
Oh, really?
I thought it was, yeah.
That's Eric Idle in all the existing...
No, it's written by John Cameron, I think.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I'm going to check that out.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Tim's the guy who, because every time I talk, he always speaks to me about the Beatles when I sing, because he knows I'm a Beatles obsessive. So I'll ask Tim about John Cameron. I'll double check that just in case.
What, Tim Britannia?
Yeah.
Probably didn't even remember John Cameron. I did. I'm sure it was written by John Cameron.
Was he at Cambridge? Was he like a contemporary of Eric Idle?
Yes, it was probably the next year, and they probably did it at. It may be that the second team, as it were, in 1963, when we went to London, there was a kind of second team in Edinburgh, which Eric was in, and Graham was in, I think, so Graham ought to remember too.
There was the Cambridge Circus show up in Edinburgh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that John Cameron was the musical director for that, and of course he's gone on to write film music and stuff. Yeah. And I've always understood that he worked out the Beatles medley. I mean, naturally, everything to do with the Beatles goes down under Eric's book, not because he necessarily claims it, but being a bosom pal with George Harrison, and I think Eric's probably nominated as Sixth Beatle or something, I don't know.
Well, there's one episode, I'll read that again. Well, no, about probably 28 or something. But there is an episode, I'll read that again, which is all about Liverpool and the Beatles, which just has you and Eric on the credits, written by Bill Oddie and Eric Idle at the end.
Really?
Yeah.
If I'm sorry, I'll read that again.
If I'm sorry, I'll read that again. There's a Liverpool... It was the end, I think, of Series 4. It was like a 13th episode. You went on to do the Panthers.
Eric never wrote for I'm sorry, read that again.
Honestly, he did write quite a bit for it in the early days. Trust me on this.
Really? No, I didn't remember that either. I was Eric's...
Because he was like Humphrey Barclay's...
Well, we were best mates, though. I mean, you know, I sort of knew him really, really, really well. But,
no, the story. He was when he was starting out as an actor in London. He was like writing in the dressing rooms for little bits and pieces. For Prune, pre-Prune days, but I'll read that again. And if you obviously you don't.
It's interesting to remember. I mean, I knew Eric very well. I mean, I'd say we were best mates. We used to go down to Chelsea in the '60s. We gave away our season tickets in protest when they sold Osgood and Hudson in the same week. I remember. So we used to go to football together, and he used to live there, first of all, Pembridge Villas. I remember they had, talking Beatles, since I'll keep you happy now, I remember when the All You Need Is Love broadcast was on, and I was at Eric's in Pembridge Villas with a bunch of other young things, whenever that was, 63 would it be? I don't know, 64.
All You Need Is Love, 67.
It's later than that, yeah. But I remember
that's really odd,
but I don't remember him writing for it.
It would have been late '64, early '65. There was a whole bolted on. I think it was a couple of months after a season had finished, a series had finished. I'll read that again, and it was all Liverpool special, and you're all doing really bad Liverpudlian accents. And there's a brilliant Beatles pastiche, a song in there. I presume written by you and Eric together, which is...
Blimey.
people here, they've got it made, everybody's on the hit parade in the town they call Liverpool, and it's just taking the piss out of the Beatles all the way through.
Sounds a little bit sort of satirical to me, that's very way.
Well, the thing is, in the book, obviously, to me, that's the roots of the Ruttles, which is, now Eric's big thing, and yet it started out with I'll Read That Again.
I had no idea about that.
Oh.
How interesting.
Well,
Eric was in it. It's a fascinating relationship there in that sense, because, obviously, originally, poor Eric had to sing my songs in Edinburgh, I think, because I'd written all the songs for the 1963 show, and Eric had to do some of my numbers. So I like to think I inspired him, so look on the bright side and all that sort of thing. I like to think entirely my doing, because he was determined he could do better than me, so and he was fed up with singing my song, so I'd like to think that. I'd like to think he's very sweet. We went to the first night at Camelot, and he actually thanked the goodies, as it were, and he got us to stand up, because he said, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for these things.
Oh, right.
That's because it's actually particularly, as Tim may have told you, Tim and I auditioned Eric for Pembroke Smoke or the Footlights or something.
No, well, that's where it all
I'll never forget that. I used to know him really, really well. I was sort of, so it was nice to very occasionally see him. So, that first night of that was the first thing.
Well, this is good, actually. We're creeping back in history, so we're nearly back at the...
How far do you want to go back? Yeah, okay, we'll get there eventually. Go to your first question.
For a start, okay, my first question is actually about your hatred for nostalgia, because I've heard your BBC 7, your comedy controller thing, where you have your thesis about how radio comedy has improved.
Terrible. That was so funny, because they asked me to do that. It sounded interesting, until they sent me this cross-section of so-called seminal funny programs, and they were fucking awful.
Oh, I see, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, and I said, I can't do this. And then, do you mind if I just do it, saying how dreadful it all was? I was really pushed to find anything I liked at all.
But that's because, if you don't mind me saying, and I Read That Again, just blew so much that is already there out of the water. Something as good as Beyond the Cannon Round the Horn still had...
Oh, no, but they were great. That was when it got funny. I think, that and obviously the Goons. Yeah. Although, ironically, I wasn't a big Goons fan, because that was the, I'm sorry, of its day, even more so, when I was at school. People were constantly coming on the bus doing Eccles voices and that sort of thing. And I what the hell? I had no idea what they were on about. And so, somebody said, well, it's a Goon show. And I remember tuning in and thinking, I don't understand a word of this, which is what you wouldn't, of course, when you just tune in just like that. And I never really got into it. And it was only much, much later when I'm Sorry was in full flow, when occasionally people would say, well, you're obviously very influenced by the Goons. And I said, well, I've never actually heard it. And so I made a point of listening to a few. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I see what they mean. OBE jokes and things like that,
Oh, but there were OBE jokes?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, blimey.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to listen to a few.
Oh,
listen to more Goons.
Yeah.
Oh dear, I've had them all on tape since I was 10, but the Goons have never grabbed me, unfortunately.
Well, there you are, you see. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. That must have been, that was a show that was even more sort of either, I'm sorry, I don't get this, to coin a phrase. Maybe that's the next one. I'm sorry, I don't get this. Graham? I've got a really good idea. What you do is half an hour, totally unfunny material, and it's called I'm Sorry, I Don't Get This.
Do it from the pub.
And the joke is, there's nothing funny about it.
People will love it. They buy into it.
Yeah, they fall about.
Well, in the book, I don't think there's any denying the fact that the Goon Show is always going to be looked on as the biggest radio comedy success ever.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not fighting that. There's no.
No, so it should be.
It's not a sketch show.
No, it wasn't really. It was a sort of stream of consciousness.
Totally. It was a narrative thing.
Milligan stream of consciousness.
My argument in the book is, it's my opinion, but it's my book.
Yeah.
I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again. It's the greatest radio comedy sketch show there's ever been. That's my thesis.
Yeah, that might be the case. The word I liked I liked a lot of what went, you know, Beyond Our Ken and the like. But again, some of those, when I'd heard them, weren't quite as good as I thought they were. But then there's a lot of the I'm Sorry things. And we did last a long time. I think also it did go on for a long time.
105%.
And I suppose it also evolved quite a lot in different ways. And I think... and had different elements, and as you know, modestly, my only claim to fame at all, I think, was in that area, was in breaking this monopoly of straight music in comedy shows.
That's what I was just going to say about Round the Horn. It's great, and it's got like very modern humour. Yeah. But then it's still got this archaic format, and that's what kind of makes it slightly.
Well, they all did, you know. It was the Fraser Hayes Four or Ray Ellington, you know, and maybe it was a bit jazzy at least, you know, and some of them were dead straight, you know. And I think I said on that BBC 7 thing, you know, I think there must have been a BBC directive, there's an orchestra, and I said, you know, you can do a comedy show, but you've got to give 10 minutes to the orchestra to play sort of marches or something like that. It was totally inappropriate. One of them suddenly came and was playing sort of great patriotic themes from World War II or something in the middle of a comedy show, you know. Bizarre.
That wouldn't have worked with
no, it wouldn't really. No.
Material. Yes. Well, childhood influences. Well, we've got, you know, it's not the Goons. It's not the Goons. Did you read the Beano?
Yeah.
Because there's a real Beano vibe.
Yes, I think there is. I mean, there's a connection to. I mean, it's, you know, there's a consistency which goes through the sort of things that we were doing, particularly after the Cambridge thing, really, for that last Cambridge show, because the genesis of this, which I dare say Tim or somebody would have told you, was that, you know, we admired the satire burst, particularly Beyond the Fringe, enormously. That was the week that was just started up. Satire was the buzzword, and our catchphrase for Cambridge Circus, or started off as Club of Plinth, as I'm sure you know, was Back to Music Hall. And what we meant by that was, you know, it was a recognition that there was some very clever, rather grown-up comedy going on, and we were going to take it back to silliness, really, and visual humour, and a bit more, you know, a bit dafter. John, I shouldn't imagine had anything to do with that, but at the same time kind of fitted the bill, because in a way he was back to silliness, at least, you know. It wasn't satire, it wasn't topical, it wasn't political, and that sort of thing.
Well, it was you and Tim mainly, and Robert Atkins, who was in the year above you.
He was the previous year, yeah.
But apparently he was very into musical as well.
Was he?
Apparently,
so. Well, they did do a lot of that. There was something, again, Graham had more to do with than me, or I think Cambridge University Light Entertainment Society, Q-Walls or something. And I think they did go off and do literally music hall type material, and I wasn't any part of that.
But you did have a love for musical, which shows.
Oh God, no! The music started at school. I apart from, you know, I don't know exactly when you started listening to stuff and all that. That's not really the point. But I do know that I was aware of the idea of comedy music, whether it was Tom Lehrer or Spike Jones or whatever, whilst I was at school, and I wrote a school review just before I left at King Edward School, Birmingham, and I've been lucky, as I think I have often in life, to have had a precedent in the sense that there's this guy called Nat Joseph who eventually went on to run Transatlantic Records, quite a seminal folk label in the 60s and 70s, and various other things. And Nat had already written a show at school, you know, so he'd set the idea, a tradition of two, as I once put it, you know, he'd written one, and I was in it when I was about 16 or 15, and then 2 years later, it was my last years, I wrote the school review, and in that I wrote a lot of songs, must have been 7 or 8 songs, which were, generally speaking, the lyrics were like fairly parochial, usually about, you know, headmaster and all this sort of thing, and school scandals and this sort of thing. But that's where that came from. I'd already started doing that, and my, as I whether it's true or whether I've just made it up, I don't know. But in putting new words for songs in the rugby coach, because they, oh God, we're not singing Eskimo Nell again. I'm going to write something different, And so that musical side was there, and I was in a skiffle group and all that sort of stuff. So that was already there when I got to Cambridge, and there was no question whatsoever that my route into the Footlights and I didn't even join the Footlights in the second year, I don't think. But it was through Pembroke College, was through the music. There's no doubt at all, because I don't think it was conscious, but as it was, I found myself, I was the only person doing comedy music, because bizarrely, music in reviews, and it wasn't just university, but it was still alive and well in universities, was still the straight stuff. And you used to, the standard cliche, which had all this clever comedy, and then you would get either a nostalgia song with a couple of guys in boaters and singing about great days on the Cam, but not funnily, or even more so, a female student in a black dress leaning against a white pillow with a martini or something, singing about being world weary in a nightclub, and you thought, this is bizarre, but it went on for ages. It was the review format, was you had bittersweet songs there, and usually Long Cigarettes or Marlena Dietrich or something. And they were still doing that, and so I had an open field. I mean, I was the only one doing that at Cambridge. It was easy, so I just rapidly became the person who did the songs.
Well, it's not just that though, is it? Because it's also that you're doing pop.
Yes.
Because Dudley Moore was
that was the difference.
Dudley Moore was funny, but he was
still doing classical pastiche. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. You're quite right. That is exactly the point. And to this day, I think the secret of the success of that, I remember even thinking at the time, was that the sort of the Cambridge students who didn't really want to admit to liking pop music could like it because it was funny now, and in fact I often thought you'd responding just as much to the fact that it's a rock and roll song as to the actual lyrics, It made it okay to like pop music if it was actually rather clever and sending it up. Which of course it wasn't the case at all, I just enjoyed singing that way.
Well, this is the funny thing. I mean, it's almost surprising that you didn't just not go to Cambridge and form a band.
Oh, no, I wasn't at that stage.
Why did English win out when you were 18?
There was never any, not the remotest possibility of that. I mean, I never was in a band apart from just the skiffle group type thing, and I wasn't. I agree. It's exactly the same background as the Stones and the Beatles and everybody. They all had a skiffle group at the same time.
Because you're obsessed with music and birds and sport.
Yes.
And then you go to Cambridge to study English.
Because it was the easiest thing to get through on. I mean, they didn't do music, birds and sport as a triumvirate, otherwise I'd have taken those at A-level, but they didn't do A-levels like that those days. I had to take history, English and French, which I was totally crap at and failed, but it was as simple as that. It was a subject I knew I got in on, so it didn't matter. I wasn't that interested, really, and it put me off reading for life. I've never read a classic since. It's true. It's not just a glib remark, it's true. It's rather sad, really.
Well, I've got an English degree myself, and I haven't read anything in a year and a half because I'm writing a book. So,
well, you've got an excuse.
Yeah. So anyway, so you landed in Pembroke, which was quite fortuitous.
Pembroke College, yes, of course, because that had been Peter Cook's college. So
exactly.
He'd had this little ethos about it being somewhere that produced more comedy and Footlights people, and the Pembroke Smoker, as they call them, the end of term review, had already, was already accepted as being a bit cut above the others.
It's a nice surprise or something. It's just there.
It's already there. That to me has been the good fortune certainly I've had, and frankly I think most of my contemporaries too from that period, that there was always a context for us to fall into and be encouraged by. I'm absolutely certain of this, and people have said, why did the Footlights and the Oxford scene at the same time, with Mike and Terry and people like that, why did that produce so many people? And I think, well, certainly a lot to do with the Footlights was that it was an encouraging, a supportive group. It had its own room, so you could virtually live there, and people did. You know, it had a bar, and had some food, it had tables, it had chairs, it had a little stage, had a piano. If you had an idea, you could do it right then. You know, and nobody was going to kind of boo you off or anything. It wasn't sort of paying your dues at the open mic night or something like that. You were up next if you were in the audience. So you know, you encouraged them, we encouraged you, and I'm absolutely certain that's why people took risks on the type of comedy they did. You know, because nobody was going to sort of judge them really. They were just going to encourage them, and they didn't have to fight the audience, you know, or anything like that. And that helped enormously. There's no doubt about it. I would never have been able to be a solo performer, although a lot of what I did was virtually solo. It was within the team, as it were, you know.
Do you have any memories of Cook popping back to college? Or?
No, not at all. The only time I met Peter was in London. That was after Cambridge. No, not at all. No.
But and do feel free to let
dispute this.
To give your anger free rein.
Oh no!
It was a terribly sexist little group, wasn't it? The whole sort of Pembroke.
Well, it all was. It wasn't just Pembroke. Okay, you know, the whole bloody thing was. You say my anger, you mean me sort of. I wasn't aware that I was that angry about it. I did think it was a bit much.
Yeah.
And I really. I mean, I was in no position to be, you know, to be sort of representing the girls or anything like that, except I thought there should be more of them. But it was, but I did get quite, I remember feeling quite knocked that people who clearly were very talented, like Miriam Margolyes and then Jermaine Greer after her and one or two other people, you know, there was that basic cliche and also untrue cliche that women can't be funny. You know, that I heard people say it, and I think I heard people I know say it, and I think I heard people who are in this book say it, but I can't remember who that would be. But I do remember that was the sort of received wisdom. Well, and I'd say, well, what about somebody like Miriam Margolyes? And they say, well, exactly, I rest my point. You know, as if to say, well, okay, she's a tubby Jewish dykey lady, but she is funny, and, you know, but it wasn't, you know, there was, you're absolutely right, you know. And Python were terrible, obviously, you know, the lovely Amy MacDonald, and we play, that's why they did all the women's parts, because they, and one can't pretend that in some ways it actually did lead to some very funny performances, because frankly a bunch of blokes playing silly old ladies probably is funnier than genuine little old ladies and stuff like that, you know. But no, it just seemed wrong to me. I couldn't believe that there actually was a rule that women can't be members of the Footlights, they can only be guests, you know, and they were allowed in for the end of term show, generally speaking, to wear a black dress, lean on a pillow and sing about being left alone on a Saturday night, you know, and this sort of thing.
Yes, that did need changing.
And then it did. Yes, it did need changing, and it got changed fairly rapidly. And I think I wasn't privy to this knowledge at the time, but I am told that Tim has had to admit that he was the last president to vote against women. I don't know whether he feels. Does he feel guilty about that?
I think his reasoning is that it wasn't against women; it was that all the women were lovers. And it was against theatricality.
Oh, bollocks. Well, in that case, he should have kept out all these bleeding posh actors who were under on. You know, all your Richard Ayres and people like that. There were Trevor Nuns and all these famous actor people. I'm sure they were allowed in. They wouldn't have been banned. So I'm sorry. You're a future director of the Royal Shakespeare Company, so you're not being a Footlights member. Too theatrical.
Because the thing, I mean, I as somebody's performed comedy in the past, I can understand wanting to avoid lovers because I can't stand them myself.
So can I, yeah.
But to be honest, my book does basically fall on the side of saying, yeah, they were sexist.
I love that idea. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, Timbo. You know, talking to the man who's prepared to go and play for the Water Rats in golf tournaments with a bunch of fucking actors and people. Give me a break.
But yes, sexism. In fact, we can get this out of the way now. Since we're doing isms.
Isms. Yeah.
I didn't want, obviously, because it's a light-hearted book. I didn't want to get too down
I think you get very serious.
There is the subject of, in the show, I'll read that again, if we've moved forward a few years now.
Oh, I mean racism.
There's
I know what
racism, homophobia and sexism. Those are the three questions.
Are they? You see, obviously, in a sense, they weren't. They were funny voiceisms, is really what it's to do with. And they were templateisms, they were caricaturisms, they were iconisms. I mean, let's face it, we are talking an era where you still had gollywogs advertising orange and, you know,
I
this
say
sort
that
of
in the
thing.
book, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't for one second think that it's actually anti-black people. Not for one second anybody ever think that. And in the same vein, I mean, when I did Howdy Doody Honey, for anything that was black, one was doing the joke black stereotype as done by minstrels and people like that who were white. You know, so lurking behind it, it was quite the opposite. But I agree, it wasn't actually, it was an easy laugh, but it wasn't racist. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah.
And the gay thing, I mean, come on. I mean, no show business has been, you know, a majority of the gay camperoony thing has been there for forever. You know, I mean, what the hell else did you get with even going back to Noel Coward, Cole Porter and that sort of thing? I'm not saying, I can't remember which of those was actually gay, but I mean, but yeah, probably both. Yeah, well, Oscar Wilde. I give you, ladies and gentlemen, Oscar Wilde.
Oh, if we're going to name
and the fact that he had a posh voice instead of going, oh hello, I'm Oscar Wilde, which would be much funnier.
Yeah.
He didn't. But you know, I mean, there's no way that was homophobic.
Well, I mean,
and obviously Kenneth Williams is the best possible example. He's been around for years, camping it up something shocking.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Oh God, yes. I mean, you know, it was just a cheap reaction thing, wasn't it? Anything that had the word, you know, anything that allowed you to come in and say no, like that, and you get your laugh, or how do you do now, honey? Or you might as well say it was dowagerist. Because anything that could lead up to
very good.
But Tim, you know, was got it all from me, and it was you know, it was the same thing. There was just sort of trigger reaction catchphrases, but I don't think there was any meaning at all. That's judging it by standards of PC-ness which have come in since, and I'm not sure. You know, it's not a debate I think I would care to go into as to what is sexist and racist now, or whether those PC-isms are.
See, this is the funny.
You see, I think I mean, let's face it, Gollywog's advertising marmalade ain't nothing toward, you know, compared with National Front or something. So I think let's get our priorities right.
Well, exactly. And the funny thing is, since writing the section of the book about this, it's amazing when I listen to contemporary comedy shows how easily it is for a heterosexual guy to do a limp-wristed gay. Oh yeah, and it's acceptable again now.
Oh yeah. Well, you get the real thing anyway, don't you? I mean, apart from anything else, you know. But you always did. I mean, I don't think Kenneth Williams was ever deceiving anybody. I don't think we actually thought he was, you know, a butch bodybuilder or something.
Plus, on the racism side of things, anytime there was a howdy do there, honey, it always seemed to be John Cleese was just about to say, oh, Christ, you can actually hear him say, so it was always sort of picked up on, and you're going like, oh, I haven't done him for ages, or anything like that. And there are jokes about Enoch Powell, which pretty much show what you really think about So it's all very carefully even. Oh, I'm quite glad then. You basically back me up on what I say in the book.
Good. Well, that's absolutely right.
Were they racist? Here are the racist moments. No, they weren't. Were they homophobic? Well, of course they bloody weren't. No. Were they sexist? Probably.
I think Gene was also a very, very good singer. And at Square East, one of the delights of Square East for us, and it was good fun, was that after the show we started doing a bit extra, because we had a brilliant trio, really famous jazz piano player called Ray Bryant, and I mean, he was really famous, you know. When the trio came up, it's a good story actually, because originally we had a white band, were provided by the Musicians Union of New York, you know, and they really weren't very good, and they really weren't getting it. And I actually said to the manager, you know, can we do anything better than this? He said, I can't, leave it to me now. Now I can. What we have to do is prove that the white guys ain't no good. Now I'll sort it, you know. So he was able to square it with the union, so these guys can't cut it. I get my boys. And he comes in, and I knew all three of the band, you know. They didn't necessarily play as as a trio. There was Ray Bryant, his brother Tommy Bryant on bass, and this guy called Walter Perkins, who was a drummer who I knew from lots of records because I was a jazz fan. And I go, fuck. And they were brilliant. They were not only fantastic musicians, they so enjoyed it. And Tim's often told stories where he's heard them propping up the bar talking to, you know, all these sort of contemporary jazz people, and I'm saying, that's right, man, we're doing this real hip jazz review with these English guys, you know. It's not a jazz review, Walter, for God's sake. But it was brilliant, and they often took, you know, we wangle them into the show a bit and that sort of thing. So in this after-show we used to say to the audience, look, that's the end of the main show. If you want to stick around and drink, that's fine, and we're going to try out some new material and do a bit of singing and stuff like that.
That must have been amazing.
It was great, and so Gene often got to sing with the band, which was lovely, and sang something, and we would try some new material. And in that process, I'm afraid, you know, the manager's sort of looking at this, and, you know, he could see how good Gene was, and I'm afraid Joe got the boot, and it's simple as that.
Well, I won't say that, but once she'd gone, I mean, that must have been amazing. You and your girlfriend, with your own club, you know, running this late night club in New York. In, you know, what are you, 21, 22?
Yeah, 23. Yeah, 24.
And obviously to the Americans as well. This mixture of rock and roll and comedy.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This sort of short British guy.
Yeah.
Comes along and he's singing like, you know, he's got a Beatles haircut and he's singing these funny...
Well, yes, it kind of fitted, yes, didn't it?
So yeah, your time in New York must have been amazing.
It was, and it was after that too, because we toured America for with this strange stage version of That Was the Week That Was, with which you've probably got down there. With Tim was in that, Jean was in that. There was another girl, Sandra Karen, who was in that. So there were two girls there, and Willie Weston was in it as well.
No, that's very important. I did not know that.
Do you know that? Oh, there you go. More stories for you, my boy. Here, take this one. So, an opportunity to slag off David Frost. And we should never refuse.
That's in the book. Don't worry.
Yes. Well, don't worry. Here's another one for you. Because it was called David Frost's That Was the Week That Was. David was doing it both in America and Britain. He used to commute, literally, backwards and forwards across the bleeding Atlantic and do the show to us. But it was advertised everywhere as David Frost, That Was the Week That Was. And his name was in fucking great letters on the front of the cover and on the posters. And which would have been fine if he was actually in it, but he wasn't. And he simply would appear about 3 times, as I recall, and do a choice gig. You know, there was one on the edge of New York, so he fancied that, so he came and did that one. There were places where we nearly got lynched when we were down south, you know, where they like to get what they've been promised, you know, and so I said, wow, this guy David Frost, we came to see David Frost, he weren't in it. What's that about? You know, and so, well, it's just his show, but he's not actually, wow, I want my money back, boys. You know, and otherwise he was strung up. And he was, that was kind of embarrassing. And what was I particularly got pissed off about was what happened was David turned up and took all Willie's best material, because Willie was doing, you know, we were doing a lot of Cambridge Circus material. I mean, the fact that it was billed as TWT was downright sort of trade description at the time. It really was mainly Cambridge Circus and things like the Beatles medley we did, you know, we done like that. But when David did turn up, Willie sort of rather meekly, you know, I don't think he got any choice, I'm not criticising him, but sort of said, oh, it's all right, I don't mind, you know, that's fine. And David would take all the juicy bits that Willie had been doing, and I thought, oh, you bugger. You even got your own material. But I remember being particularly knocked about that on Willie's behalf, actually, yeah. But Tim and Willie were very close friends, and they knocked around. When we had a bit of time off, they tended to go off to places, and Jean and I would do our thing. You know, we went down to, we had a week off in the tour, and I think those guys, Willie, Tim, and Al Mancini, went off to Mexico or something when we went down to Florida. You know,
wow.
Yeah, but that was fantastic. We were in the thing was being driven. The bus was being driven when we were in a bus. Not driven, but we had the guy who'd done the Beatles tour as our sort of stage manager. Another heavy New Yorker who kept reminding us of what the Beatles gave him in places. And so, yeah, I was about here, the Beatles gave me a gold watch, you know. You say, well, I think we can afford a coffee, you know, that's about all you're getting, you know, enough of this. It was one hell of an experience, because we played some places where there were 6,000 people in an Astrodome in Texas, and other places like a mining college in Missouri or something with a couple of hundred rednecks, you know. And it was such a mixture. So it was an amazing experience.
You can also, I mean, it must have been weird enough for you, but Tim Brooke Taylor, sort of public school boy, gone to Cambridge and then suddenly in Redneck.
Well, you see, as Tim has quite rightly pointed out, my background is every bit as snooty as his, but not quite. And it isn't really. I don't have a double barrel name, and he's got one that you'll never live that down. Yeah. And he did go to Winchester, which is boarding school, and I would say that his family were more stately than mine. Yeah. Mine all worked in the mills and that sort of thing. In mills. Right. But I can't deny it. I went to a posh school in Cambridge, so it's almost as bad, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, so the tour wound down, and people started trickling back to the UK, and Humphrey Barclay was by then assistant producer, and he put together the first series of I'll Read That Again. Now, did you...
Take your word for it. Well, 1965, I'm sure that's true. Is that right? About 65?
I think, yeah. I think very, very, very start of 65.
Yeah.
So, did you take it as read,
no,
I guess?
It'd be later than that. It would be later than that. Because one thing I do remember is we left New York in early May.
Ah.
I know that. Definitely.
No, I don't think I've got it wrong in the book. That's just my memory.
No, definitely. So we wouldn't have started anything till summer or autumn, I would imagine.
I think that perhaps that's when he settled down into the BBC.
Well, he may have. Yes, that's right. He may have planned it.
Yeah. So he nearly did a show called Get Off My Foot, which had none of you involved, but then you all started to come back from America.
Yeah.
So, and were you aware that probably one of the greatest ingredients that made the original 3 tryout episodes such a hit that the BBC wanted more, was you and your music when you came back? And how did you know that I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again had gone to series? Were you kind of contacted? Or?
I honestly don't remember. I don't know where Tim or Graham did, or where Tim or Graham was coming from a different place, of course, at that point.
Yeah.
I think we'd been told, because as you said, we did a sort of a piloty thing before we went, didn't we, or something like that. So I guess it may have been. I don't recall it as being, anything more than a sort of given, that we kind of knew with any luck that's what was going to happen. Yeah. We were going into something in radio. We're going to pick that up again. Yeah. And I guess Humph probably got in touch with us very rapidly and told us that. But I don't remember the circumstances.
But how do you? You've got, you're 22, 23, you've got your own...
By then we've got a bit older, we keep getting older now.
Right.
We come back, 23 actually.
Yeah.
23, 20, yeah.
23,
yeah, it was.
And, okay, you're part of a gang. John Cleese obviously isn't in the first series.
Was he not?
He wasn't, he started in the second series.
Right, okay.
But you're 23, and your sketch troupe has got its own radio comedy show.
Yes. Do you know why John wasn't in it?
He was doing Half a Sixpence.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. I hope Tim tell you how we all went to see him.
You went to see him?
Yeah.
Where was he?
Oh, we didn't tell him either. Tim and I had been on tour doing the I Was Read That last thing. We came back into New York and we heard that John was in Half a Sixpence. We were going, I'm sorry, we don't believe this. He's in what? He's in a musical? He's camping around in a musical. And so we actually hired a box, and me and Jean and probably a couple of others, and we were all sitting in this box, which was right over the stage, and John came prancing out, I know he had to do some silly, the villagers dance or the Jolly Cockney routine or something like that, and I remember him I don't think he had anything to say at all, I don't remember, and he certainly couldn't sing, so I don't know why he did it or whatever. I thought it was jolly interesting or something like that, and of course he was flouncing around with the hanky and then looked up, oh my God, he said, hi John! It was bizarre.
So he didn't start until the second series because of that.
Yeah.
But do you, I can certainly imagine, being 23 years old and having a comedy show obviously you had a lot of writers and things like that, but you're part of the team, putting it together. You've got a chance you know, you're entering this world of Round the Horn and all these things that are still on.
Yeah.
You're the young generation. Do you remember? I'm not going to quote the Monkeys, but
No.
do you remember, you know, creating your own groovy comedy show and any plans or?
I'll be honest, I don't. I mean, it may or may not have been that. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't. You know, it. Apart from anything else, I guess, you see, none of us had those ambitions. Yeah? Had we been from a more show-busy tradition or something, this would have been a dream come true. You know, Names in Lights would have been our ambition and all that sort of thing, and Onward, you know, and we've made it. No, not at all. Because we'd all been to university studying something else, which we assumed might take us on. In my case, with an English degree, I just kind of assumed I'd probably teach or something like that, and I had actually arranged to do a teaching practice, and I'd also arranged to go as a sort of resident naturalist on a trip to Russia or something like that. So I had those things there. And what happened was, you know, and it took some years for this to kind of sink in, was, you know, oh, I think this is what we're doing now. So, you know, so we never felt part of any showbiz thing, and we never felt really, I don't think, that therefore that you're saying, hey, I've made it, because you never had those expectations at all, you know. And to be perfectly honest, you know, if it had fallen apart, and fine, you know, and a couple of people who were connected, like Chris Stewart Clark and Anthony Buffery, you know, didn't carry on, you know, and in a way, I suppose David Hatch didn't entirely, not so much as a performer anyway, you know. But I think that's what it was, that we never thought, wow, you know, this is what we're meant to be doing, and where should we go next, or anything like that. It always seemed a bit of, I dare say, at the back of our minds, we just thought, oh well, this is fine while it lasts, you know, we'll see.
So but I mean, it's just Joe Kendall really who had sort of showbiz.
Well, I suppose that's true. I never really thought of that, but I guess, you know, one was aware that Joe was an actress, you know, and yeah. Very bad idea to me. I'm sorry, I mean that again, Tim, if acting is what you're after, but there you go.
All right, a few quick fire-ish questions about early shows, about the sort of early whatever you can remember about.
This is when I get.
No memories of the genesis of Rhubarb Tart. Why Rhubarb Tart? Funny?
No, I have no idea. I suspect that was a John one. John was given to sometimes putting in something, I thought, through sheer bloody mindedness, which he would then consider to be funny, and wasn't at all. But, and I don't know to this day whether he really thought it was funny, or whether he was being awkward or what. I don't know. I've just got a slight memory of John saying, you know, I've just changed this line, and I now say, you know, and tomorrow I shall go to the moon, eat, or something like that, you know, and you say, yeah, and he said, well, do you think that's funny? And I, it's all right, you know, he didn't want to say no, but that did happen occasionally. And I say, sometimes I thought he was just being awkward for the sake of it, but I'm pretty sure Rhubarb Tart came from him, and I have no idea why. No idea at all.
Well,
any more than I could.
Song out of it anyway.
Well, yes. Any more than one knows about ferrets or anything.
Well, that's what
your next question.
Isn't it interesting how?
Yeah.
There's a